thanks everyone for coming, and thank you, Corey, for organizing. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight, and hopefully you're gonna learn a thing or two. So this is called 10 Myths About Running. There are way more than 10, but we handpicked 10 that hopefully some of you will kind of identify with, that maybe those things you're thinking right now or you've thought in the past. Our goal is to share the science, the latest research on these topics. So we'll just start by introducing ourselves a little bit. So MoveMed Physiotherapy, we're, like Corey was saying, we're a new clinic in town. We actually started in September, and we're on Richter in the North End. And we're specializing in running injuries and sports physio and triathletes. So that's what we do. So just to introduce myself, unless you speak French and can pronounce my name, Jean-François. I go by JF most of the time because I get Jean Francois, I get all sorts of weird things, so JF is just easier. I'm a runner. I did my physio degree in Ottawa. I'm from Quebec City, as you can hear in my voice, so very French. And I practiced in Quebec for a few years. I did a certificate of sports physio, working with teams. I worked a lot with running, with triathletes as well over the years. And I decided to push into the research field as well. So I did a master's and a PhD on knee pain, running biomechanics, running shoes, all those things. Some of them that we'll be talking about tonight. And the reason why I moved to BC was to go to UBC to do research on running and knee osteoarthritis, because I was getting all the time, is running bad for my knees, as a question from my patients. So that's something I wanted to investigate. So we'll get to talk about that as one of the myths for sure. I wear several hats. So clinician, I work in the clinic part-time with Bea and with Kaz, because I do research and teaching quite a bit. So I do research with UBC, with the running clinic. So the running clinic is an organization that I've been with since 2011, and we're teaching in different countries. The kind of talks that we're giving here, I've traveled all over the world to teach how to prevent, treat running injuries, that sort of thing. So it's been a really good and fun journey with the running clinic. So that's the organization with which I'm teaching a lot and researching, and also at UBC. So I'm a clinical assistant professor at the Faculty of Medicine, teaching to the physio students and to the medical students here in Kelowna. I'm a runner, like I said. I like to trail run quite a bit. We started with Kaz doing 50K races last year. Maybe we're going to push that a bit more this year. I'm a decent cyclist, and in the pool can survive, but not quite ready to join you guys on Tuesday morning. So maybe, you never know. So so that's it. That's about me. So I'll just let Bea introduce herself and tell us about her background.
So I'm a visual person, so I just have pictures. But I grew up in Vancouver. I went to UBC, did kinesiology. While I was doing that, I played field hockey for UBC, so I was a starting goalie with them. And I also played for Team Canada. And then when I retired from high performance sport at 22, I took up running. So there's my first half marathon, which I did not train for, would not recommend that. I've learned a lot since then. That was before I was a physio. But after that, I did a master's degree in neuroscience research. So I was in a neuroplasticity lab looking at the effects of exercise on the brain. But after working in a lab with no windows, I decided I wanted a job working with people. So I did physiotherapy after that. So special interest in runners. And I also have extra training in female pelvic health, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. And I also wear 3 hats. My biggest hat is the clinician hat. The smallest hat is the researcher hat. I mostly, in that role, share the science with other clinicians. in easy to read summaries. So I really enjoy reading the research and translating it to healthcare professionals and the general public, which I do through the running clinic. And I'm also dabbling in teaching as well as a clinical instructor with the UBC Med program and the physio program as well. And I love running for fun. I'm surprised I actually don't have a picture of my dog there, but most of my runs are on the trails with the dog, so yeah.
So Corey said we can use this. Just hold one side and try to have three hands.
Okay. Cool. Okay. My name is Kaz. Full name is Kazunori Kikuchi. Sounds like a Japanese name. So I'm a Japanese, originally from Japan, and I grew up. I didn't do triathlon or running. First, I started with soccer, and I went to university in Tokyo. And after the physical education, after that, I moved to here, Canada, 2009, and was kind of like initially coming here to getting into the physio program, but took long. So like I was doing the more rehab assistant for the more neurological conditions, so like Parkinson's or other kind of like neurological conditions. And finally I got into the McGill University and studied in the McGill physiotherapy program. And McGill was great. Montreal was a great city, but the winter was so cold. And minus 20 weather was like a really summer, feel like summer. And today, so like minus 15 wasn't, like bad. But yeah, so I decided to move back to BC. And so I started KGH and mobile physio clinic. And now recently I joined the MoveMed physiotherapy because what they are doing is amazing, and I like the education and the passing the education to the runners and triathletes. So I also work for a running clinic Japan. I am organizing the running clinic content to the Japanese healthcare professionals. So in fact, the Jeff and I are going to the Japan this May, this March.
March, yeah.
Yeah, 2 months from now, and organize the course in Japan. So, and I also wear 2 hats. As a clinician, as a physiotherapist, and also the speaker and the educator for the running clinic Japan. And here is my family, just my wife and 2 kids. I'm a runner as well, trail running. I love trail running. After give up the soccer, just the trail running is more freedom to go on the mountain and run and those things. I tried actually like a couple years ago. I tried a sprint, I think distance, swimming and biking. Hardest part was swimming. So I need to try that, practice swimming later with Jeff.
Might be our next challenge.
Next challenge, yes. Okay.
All right. Okay, ready to get started? Myth number 1. So we built this kind of in a format of fake news, okay? So fake news number 1, running barefoot is harmful. We've all read that? Do you agree? You think it's true? No. So I tried.
There's glass on the floor.
Yeah, for needles. Yeah. But you're right.
Running needles.
Yeah.
It's a possibility.
So it's kind of a segue into the more minimalist shoes side of things. And I don't know here who has used more minimalist shoes in their training. Right, some of you have, not a lot. So the trend right now is a lot into the maximalist shoes. So a lot of cushioning, a lot of technologies in the shoes, but I like to go back to the basics quite often and just think about how we can make our body stronger. So there's 3 things you can see on this slide at the top. Minimalist shoes, they can make your feet stronger, they can reduce impact on your knees, and they can make you run faster. So the first here, make your feet stronger, we have a bunch of studies on that, saying that if you get used to being more barefoot, walking barefoot, running barefoot, or with minimalist shoes, you increase the strength and the volume of your foot muscles. And it's quite a big change that you can see. Like it's upwards of 15-20% strength and volume of your foot muscles. So very interesting from a performance standpoint to get stronger feet. Because like as athletes, as triathletes, I'm sure you guys are in the gym, you're working out, you're trying to get stronger, but you can also get stronger from your feet, and that can be very helpful for performance. So definitely something that I recommend incorporating into your training. So when I read somewhere that running barefoot is bad for you, no, it's actually good. It doesn't mean that you're going to be running all the time barefoot, but you can be running, like the first time it's going to be 1 minute, and after that you're going to add 1 minute every time, and then you're going to be at 5 to 10 minutes once, twice a week. That's it. You don't need to do more than that, but it's still going to be making your feet stronger. So if you wish to make the transition between a big shoe and a minimalist shoe, like you need time. If you have questions about that, if you're interested in doing that, that's what I do in the clinic as well. So what kind of shoes might be appropriate for you, how to make the transition. There's a scale that we use that was part of my PhD. We created a scale to tell you how long you should take to go from shoe A to shoe B safely without injuries. So if that's something that you're considering, then it could be good in terms of performance. It reduces impact on your knees, believe it or not. The more cushioning you have, the more impact you have on your knees. Higher shoes, higher cushioning, more impact on your knees. So just to give you an idea, that the minimalist index is the scale I was telling you about. So the more minimalist the shoe to the right, so 100% minimalist, will increase how much load is applied on your foot, your Achilles tendon, your calf muscle, but will lower it on your knees. So it depends what your priority is. It doesn't mean, it's not like in school. You don't need to aim for 100%. That's not how it works. It's just to give you an idea of where you're applying the load when you run. Okay, so if your goal is to protect your foot for whatever reason, then you might benefit from more cushioning, and that's fine. So just understanding that different kind of shoes will load your joints differently. But when I hear that shoes like that decrease load at the knee, that's a myth, because we have a bunch of studies now, and they're listed here for you, showing that you increase the load at your knee, you increase the impact on the ground when you're wearing shoes like Hoka's. The Hoka's are the ones being tested in all these studies. So you don't reduce impact. The only place where you reduce forces is actually at your foot, your Achilles tendon, and your calf muscle. That's it. So it depends what you're looking for. And again, on the right side here, more minimalist will decrease forces at the knee, the hip, and the low back. So again, depends what your objective is. If you want to make a transition, you have to have a good reason. And if your reason is that you want to run faster, I'm just going to skip this one. Well, every 100 grams in your feet is 1% of oxygen consumption. And most people don't know about that, but that's a huge difference, right? So if you're used to, say, a typical shoe might be around 300 grams. If you're adapting to a shoe that's about 100, 150 grams, you just save 3% of oxygen consumption when you're running. That's huge, right? But most of the time, if you go shopping for shoes, they won't necessarily tell you about that, because it's not a good business to sell shoes that have less technologies. So racing flat shoes, maybe some of you, who uses racing flat shoes? Anyone? No? Oh, one?
8 years ago.
8 years ago. Yeah. And why not anymore?
Because they have super carbon shoes now.
Exactly, right? Because it's actually easier to sell technology than it is to sell something that's more minimalist. But I'll show you a study that we did in a second. But that's basically a study here that says if you go from a shoe, in this case 333 grams to 138 grams, so about 200 gram difference, they did a 6-week program adding from 5% to 35% of their weekly volume with the lighter shoe. So those people had better improvements in running economy and performance versus those who stayed with their heavier shoes. So it's a good training tool to train with lighter shoes. Okay, and even the carbon plated shoes, they're not 138, they're about 200, low 200s. Okay, so that's a study we did briefly in New Zealand with our group with the running clinic. So we tested the Nike Vaporfly versus the Saucony Endorphin, but racing flat version. And we asked recreational runners, so 18 male runners who were running a 5K in 20 to 25 minutes. We looked at their running economy, how much oxygen they're using, and we actually blinded them by spray painting the shoes in black, so they didn't know that it was a Vaporfly, you know, so just trying to skip the psychological component of it. And both shoes were as good to improve running economy without any difference between the two. So again, you don't necessarily need to buy a shoe that's going to be $300, $350 that is going to cost you $1 per kilometer. That's how much it is if you go with the carbon plated shoes. I know triathletes like to spend on equipment, but just so you know, that's where we're at in terms of evidence. Okay? Good. Any questions on this before we go to myth number 2? No, you're all convinced? I'm not selling shoes, by the way. We're not selling shoes. It's just what the science is.
How about, there's a difference between economy and speed?
Yes.
Is there a difference in the study of between the two and,
Yeah.
and overall speed?
So in this case, all these runners were used to having more cushioned shoes. So their comfort level was a bit lower because we asked them like right away, wear this minimalist shoe. So their comfort level was a bit less, and they had a few seconds difference on the time trial versus the Vaporfly. That's the advantage of the Vaporfly, is that most people are already used to more cushioning. So when they transition to that very light shoe, they go faster, but not just because of the carbon plate or the foam, it's because it's a light shoe and it fits with their habits, basically. So basically we had a few seconds difference, not a major difference. Running economy was improved the same. But I'm sure that if those people had time to adapt to these minimalist shoes, the results would have been the same. It's just, it was a change for them. Yeah, great question. Good. Myth number 2, Kaz.
Okay. Okay, myth number 2. This I like it. This is cushioned shoes. So, who ever had the cushioned running shoes prevent injuries? Anyone heard anything about it? Yeah. I like this article because running puts lots of strain on the body, especially if you land on your heel. And imagine you also run on pavement. But don't worry, footwear companies have you covered. The latest cushioning technology launching this spring will change your life. So this is typical article about the footwear company. So we're going to see the studies here. So I'm going to introduce the 2 studies. The first one is 247 recreational runners. They divided into the 2 groups. One of the groups is the more harder sole, and second group is the softer sole. And any other technology, that, lots of drops and other things, exactly the same. The stiffness of the sole was only the difference. And what came out was that after 5 months of regular running, there is no difference in the running injury risk. So, whoa, hold on, is softest, a cushioning shoes prevent injuries, but actually didn't come out like that. Okay, another study is the same research group did another study is 8 more increased number of recreational runners, so 848 recreational runners, and randomly choose which groups they go. And second one was a very small reduction for the softer sole. Okay, so a softer sole is reduced the small reduction in injury risk, but in light runners. So normally think that you're heavier, then you maybe have the more impact on the body and may get injured. But only they came out that the light runner reduced the injury risks. So, well, it doesn't really, for me, it doesn't really make sense. So still, we are kind of like cushioning shoes preventing injury is not really convincing. So next one is a drop. So a drop is another technology that lots of the footwear company is pushing forward. And drops is basically the heel to toe drop. So difference in the thickness between the heel and the toe. There is one study, is 553 recreational runners. They divided into 3 groups. One is zero drop, so 0 millimeter difference. And the second one is 6 millimeter and 10 millimeter. So what's the result? Was after 6 months of regular running, overall, so heel to toe drop does not influence the running injury risk. So drop, if you have the more cushion on the heel, there is no difference in the injury risk. So this is saying that the cushioning shoes, we said, I asked you before, lots of people believe that they prevent injuries, but for the science perspective, there is no evidence about the cushioning and drop prevent injuries. Do you have any?
Big selling point when you go buy shoes, eh? That's a 4 mil, that's a 6 mil, that's a 10 mil. Doesn't matter that much.
Do you have any questions about myth number 2? Everyone
Were there any influences or was there any benefit other than injury reduction? No.
No.
Okay.
It always depends what you're used to, right? If you say, well, I've always run with like a 12 millimeter drop, like even like shoes were up to 18 in the early 2000s, like 18 millimeter drop. Like right now, today we say, what were they thinking? But it was a normal thing then. There's no reason for that. I don't know who decided that you needed a drop in the shoe. Doesn't make any sense.
Actually, in Japan, they have the negative drop shoes. So toe is more higher than heel, so that force the runners to land on the forefoot. But I don't know that's effective or increase the
I remember
performance.
those for basketball.
So they make it lots of different kind of shoes, but there's no evidence about those things.
Yeah.
It's just a selling feature, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Much easier for to sell. Technology. Yeah, exactly. If you have the barefoot shoes, it's really tough.
Was there any difference in injuries? Like, so risk of injury could be a number of different things. Same injury profile between different drops. No,
In
let's
that
say,
study.
for example, more Achilles issues with less of a drop as opposed to more of a drop or anything like that. Or?
No. What they've reported though is the difference between, I don't know, Kaz, if you remember, that's the difference between the regular runners and the more novice runners. So basically, people who are already used to higher drop shoes, they got less injured in higher drop shoes. And those who were starting to run, they got less injured in lower drop shoes. But the type of injury wasn't really different between the groups. So it's more, what are you used to? And when there's a change, then you might be more at risk of injury.
That's a good point though with the Achilles, because we have to remember there's a difference between prevention and treatment. So there may be a reason for treatment if you have an Achilles injury, why we would want to put you in more of a drop kind of thing. But as a preventative measure, the drop doesn't help with anything.
Okay, myth number 3.
Okay. All right, so myth number 3. I love this one. Abnormal alignment leads to more running injuries. I'm sure we've all heard this before. People with knock knees or, we get this all the time. My knee comes in when I run, or when I run, my foot comes out this way, or I have flat feet, I pronate. These are all thought to be causes of running injuries. But there's been a lot of studies, and last year there was a systematic review and meta-analysis that took all of these studies looking at your static posture. So for example, do you have flat feet? Do you have high arches? Do you have knock knees? As well as your dynamic running. So do your knees come in while you run? That kind of thing. And systematic review and meta-analysis is the highest level of evidence that we have. And they found no differences in biomechanical, so the way that you run, or musculoskeletal measurements between the people who, so there are no differences. It didn't lead to any injury. So there's no link with injury risk. So yeah, the measurement, this is a huge change to what most people think. At least personally, when I was 12, I was told that I have flat feet, I need orthotics for the rest of my life. So I was given orthotics, and it's just like, that's not based on the science. So there's this notion that we always have to correct things if we're not perfectly symmetrical or straight, but there's nothing we can do about our anatomy. Like, you're born with flat feet, you have flat feet. That's not going to increase your risk of injury. Most people in Asia and Africa have flat feet, so it's kind of like saying all of those people are at higher risk for injury. No, they're born that way, right? So it's not because of our structure or the way that we run that causes the injury. Any questions with that one?
Who's been told that 5 feet are dangerous? Right, you've heard that. It's quite common.
In Japan is the same. Flat feet is normal, so I don't have the flat feet, so I'm abnormal. So maybe I have an injury risk because I'm not normal.
Yeah. Okay, next one. Number 4. Running is bad for your knees. Stop now. Right? Because running leads to tremendous amounts of impact on your knees. If you really want to get titanium knees in your 40s, keep running, says an orthopedic surgeon who begs everyone to stop before they're doing more harm. He also calls for local races to stop. It's a bit exaggerated, but you get the point. I've heard that so many times from surgeons or healthcare professionals who do not run, right? And that's the key point here. They don't run. And I'll summarize this, but I can give you a full hour on that topic because it's my research, main research interest right now. But actually, recreational running is good for your knees. That's what the research is suggesting right now. So what I mean by recreational running is, has anyone here done, say, World Championships? I see Corey with his... Okay.
We had that.
Olympic Games? No? So you count as recreational, as per the definition that we have. So we made an infographics just to show you a bit of the dose-response relationship. On the left side, you have the sedentary people or non-runners. 10 out of 100 have knee osteoarthritis. You look at recreational runners, is 3 out of 100 who have osteoarthritis in their knees. And the elite runners are those, like I said, so we're talking about Olympic Games, World Championship, professional runners, so very, very high level. Those people might be more at risk. So that's 13 out of 100. It's just a little bit higher than the sedentary people, actually. It's not dramatic, but it's definitely higher than the recreational runners. So basically, it might be protective. That's what we see that right now in the literature, and even protective against the risk of getting a total knee replacement or a joint replacement surgery. So that's huge. When people tell me, oh, I was told to stop running because I might get a knee replacement surgery earlier, it's actually the opposite. That's what we see right now. we now know that your knees, they need to be loaded. And I say knees because we have more research on these, but it's the same for your hips, the same for your foot, your ankle joints. If you load them, they will stay healthier. You just load them the right amount. It's probably your best way to help delay the onset of any osteoarthritis. So I would say, keep running. It's actually good for your joints. Who has been told here that running was bad for their knees and that they should stop? See a few hands. Okay. By healthcare professionals? Or just by friends, family? We always have that family member. Running is bad, you should stop.
Top competitor.
Yeah.
I just quit. 10 years ago, I used to run so much, but it was so bad for my knees that
Yeah, exactly.
back in the day.
Yeah, there's always that person. So now you know what to tell the people around you. Running is not bad for them. Myth number 5.
This will be fun because I think like a continuation of what the Jack said. So this is, oops, I pressed something. The lower back. So you have the lower back pain. Running is the worst things you can do. Oh my God. This one is the article, especially like some like famous popular celebrities say running over 30 miles a week for probably my first 5-6 years on tour pretty much destroyed my body and my knee, the Tiger Woods. So Tiger Woods said that, so maybe people think that, oh, this is no good. Running, you need to stop running. But see what the research say. I'm going to introduce this research, but I'm going to first, you see the picture. There is some disc. We talk about disc. So in between the spinal bone, there is a disc that roll as the shock absorber, and those discs, runners' discs are stronger and thicker than non-runners. So that's basically the conclusion. But like a little bit more like numbers here. So white one is white one is the non-runners, and the red one is the people who run the 20 to 40K per week, and the black one group is running 50 plus K per week. First graph, like a left side, showing that how strong the disc is. So compared to non-runners, other people who run 20 to 40K and 50 plus K are much more stronger. They have the water content and much more tolerance to the stress. And other side, on your right side, is how thick their disc is. So basically, like a first non-runner white one and red one is no much difference, but people who run more than 50K plus per week are much more thicker. So as Jack say, if we load properly, then gradually body will adapt to the stress, so get much more stronger. So yes, sometimes we say that like running is no good for the people who have back pain. But sometimes, in some cases, we recommend the runners to run, and running is a part of the therapy or intervention for those people. So it depends on the cases. We would ask the people to run instead of stop doing it. Do you have any question, or have you ever told that, or you shouldn't run as well because you have a lot of back pain?
Is there any variation for the terrain on the impact?
Oh, good question. That is another myth. So maybe we're gonna talk about those things.
Yeah.
But do you have any other questions? That's good. Okay.
Okay, I think your question is the next one, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you.
Yes, so myth number 6, harder surfaces lead to more running injuries. Makes sense, right? Like concrete, harder on the knees. But the research says otherwise. So comparing soft surfaces such as grass and harder surfaces such as pavement, they have the same risk of injury. There's no difference. So what we tell people is variety is good. It's good to just have different terrains in your training because that can minimize the amount of overload you have. So it all comes down to loading. And actually with the research, when it was similar to the shoes with the cushioning. So opposite to what we thought is there's actually a little bit more knee loading with the softer surfaces than the hard surfaces. So that was like, I think a smaller study, but that came out.
There's a few of those.
Yeah. A few studies that point that out. So yeah, very opposite to what we thought. So in general, just good to vary the surfaces. Same with the footwear that we wear as well. Any questions with that one? Awesome. Okay, I think you're next, right? Okay.
Okay, all right. We're at number 7. So myth number 7 is sleepy glutes cause knee pain. Have you ever heard that your glutes are asleep? That's a thing. No? No, that they're not firing?
Yeah.
It's the same concept. So that's a common thing that we hear in the world of physio. That's the trend is, oh, your glutes aren't firing and that's why you got injured. I will say, no, it's not true. And actually that came from interpreting the research the wrong way most of the time. If you look at how muscle strength might lead to injury in terms of hip muscles, the literature reviews that we have out there say that hip strength is not a risk factor for kneecap pain, knee pain overall. There's an exception in adolescence, but those who got injured, they were actually stronger from their glutes. So if someone tells you you got injured because your hip muscles were weaker, it's actually based on no science at all. What we see though is that when you have pain, then you're a bit weaker. So it's not like if you go see someone, they assess your strength and they say, oh, you're weak from your glutes, that's why you got injured. It's actually the other way around. You are weaker from these muscles because you have pain. So it's just a different way of interpreting it, but that's what the research is saying. So hip weakness is a consequence of pain and not the cause of it. It still means that you can do exercises to help with your pain, but it's wrong to assume that you got injured because your glutes were not firing. Okay, so it's just not the right way to take the problem. Again, you might still do your exercises, but the point here is just in the way that if someone tells you those arguments, then you might be thinking, oh, that's actually not what the research suggests. Okay, who has been told they had glutes that were not firing? Yeah, all the problems over there. Okay, that's a common one. I see a lot of people with knee injuries and they come and see me after they saw other people, and the glutes not firing is almost like over 50% of the time. It's not a thing. Okay, myth number 8. Do these 7 stretches before you run so you don't get injured. Stretching in runners. Who stretches here? I'm not saying stretching is bad. I'm just
scared to raise
yeah,
my
exactly. Should I? Okay. So, what's the science on stretching? And I'll go quick on this one. Also, like these are all like short teasers. We basically have full presentations on all of these different things. But if you do stretch statically, probably not ideal to do it before running or before training, because the research suggests that it doesn't increase muscle temperature, doesn't improve recovery, doesn't reduce soreness, and it might even increase your risk of injury actually if you do it. But if you do it regularly, it may help reduce injuries, it may help with performance. So don't feel like you have to stretch statically before you go for a run. There's no point. You might save a lot of time if you don't. So
We do more dynamics.
exactly, that's my last line. So dynamic stretches are likely better before running. So if you look at the research, you have people doing static stretches before jumping, sprinting, all these things. They don't jump as high, they don't sprint as fast if they do static stretching before. But if they do dynamic, that is helpful to improve performance. So we're talking about like that kind of movement, like something that you would not hold for 30 or 60 seconds like we all learned in high school, and that's useless. But you can do that if you have an injury or if you do that at night or something like that. Okay, little quiz for you. You have all these muscles, okay, and I took two runners here as an example. You have IT band, rectus femoris or quadriceps, triceps surae or the calf muscle, the hip adductors, hamstrings, iliopsoas or hip flexors, and glute med and glute max. These are common muscles that runners will stretch. Which ones do you think are useful to stretch?
Quads.
Quads? Good guess.
Calf.
Calf?
Come on.
Quads?
I think the IT band.
No.
No?
No.
We have hip flexor guests over here.
Yeah, we had one? Oh, there you go. Perfect. Good work. So basically, you want to stretch the muscles that help you decrease the stiffness and the resistance to your push. So that's your quadriceps and your hip flexors. You don't need a very flexible IT band. You don't need a flexible calf muscle. There's even studies saying if your calves are stiffer, you might run faster. Because of that stiffness, that's a passive stiffness where your muscle is not contracting. It's just there's a passive recoil of energy if your calf is stiffer. So basically, rectus femoris, iliopsoas, hip flexors are two good bets. The other ones, they're not necessary, especially if you run in a straight line. Yeah.
Your IT, if you do go for a run, your IT afterward, if you don't stretch it out, or it'll tighten up quite a bit. Yeah. Is that
So
true or no?
that's an interesting point. So if for you, like you feel these things after you run, then it might be good for you, right? Like everyone is different. I just have a problem with everyone should be stretching this and that. Now the IT band itself, there's also a debate whether you can actually stretch it or not, because it's a very thick band of tissue.
So I'd have like acupuncture afterwards, and I'm going like after like running, then I have acupuncture a few days later. I could really feel the needle in the IT band.
Okay.
And does it like the IT band if it's not worked? How I understand it is it gets tight and that pulls on the knee and that can cause knee pain. Myth or truth? Myth. There was my understanding of knee.
That's okay. But in your case, again, maybe you're reacting a certain way and then you need to have a specific approach. It's not a cookie cutter approach.
It is the human body.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
What about foam rolling and such?
Yeah, so foam rolling can help just reduce muscle tensions. You don't elongate muscles, right? They don't get longer by foam rolling. So it can help as a self recovery technique if you want to help reduce soreness in your muscles. There's a few studies now, not a lot, but on foam rolling, suggesting that it can help you improve your range of motion. So basically, if someone asks me, I'm not foam rolling right now, should I start foam rolling? My answer will most likely be no, not really. But if you tell me, I'm already foam rolling, it helps me a lot, should I keep doing it? Yes, of course. Right? So I don't have enough science to tell you you should be doing it, but if it's helping you, just go ahead and do it. That's great. So again, the rest is kind of a gray zone, case by case, but yeah. So another question, yeah.
So quads and hip flexors, what would be the best stretches for those after running, and like what length of time?
So the classic one will be this one. in this position.
Yep.
That's the hip flexor one.
Okay.
And then you need to add I don't have enough hands. You'll need to add a component of, yeah. So that's one you can do. The other one you can do is just go like this to save time and do both at the same time. Go up so you get both hip flexors and quads. And the hold is like somewhere between 30 and 60 seconds, 2 to 3 reps, up to 5 reps. If you want to really gain range, that would be once or twice a day. Like you need to be consistent with it. And not necessarily just after running, but kind of before you go to bed, when you get up in the morning. When your body is cold, it seems a bit more effective to gain range of motion.
And it will probably feel good for you guys because you spend a lot of time in this position on the bike too. So just to counteract that as well.
Yeah.
I do the edge of the bed as well. So, like sit edge of the bed, hold the knee, and lie down so that the other knee goes down. So like you can stretch, like really good stretch as well.
Is that a good one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it obviously depends on the sport. Gertrude, my client, who's an elite putter, had severe hip OA. I mean, I gave her a few stretches. It worked out really well. But depends. So if you take a random cyclist here, who one day he got banned from cycling, I'm not sure why, but got banned from cycling, and he used to be a triathlete, right? So he went back to running. But what's interesting is that his mechanics, when he went back to running after stopping the bike, well, not stopping, but getting away from the bike, do you know how fast he ran his first marathon with a VO2 max of 90? No one is anywhere close to that here. 90 VO2 max. How fast was his first marathon back?
It was just under 3, wasn't it?
15 seconds under 3. Yeah, 2 hours, 59 minutes, 45 seconds.
Was he on the juice?
Let's
be straight up here.
I don't know.
There's room for that.
There's room for debate. I don't know. Got that on record. So the point that's interesting is that as he trained more for running, his next marathon, that was just 4 or 5 months after that, he ran Boston, he improved by 15 minutes. Okay, no one improves by 15 minutes. Anyways, but a VO2 max of 90, if you're a runner, you run 210.
Yeah.
Not 245. So you look at videos of him initially, and he was very stiff from his hips and that area. And I'm sure he worked a lot on his dynamic stretches, on his static stretches to improve his range of motion. So that would be an example. Now, as a triathlete, you have to find the best of both worlds, and it's not necessarily an easy answer, right? So it depends on your own stiffness, your range of motion, and then you have to customize it to your situation. Like Bea was saying, you spend a lot of time in this position pulling on your pedals too, which means that your hip flexors adapt to that position and they become stronger in that position. So if you stretch too much into hip extension, it might help you for the run, not as much for the bike. So it's kind of a trade-off somewhere, most likely. Okay? All right, myth number 9. I think it's Kaz.
Yes.
Got 2 more to go.
Yeah. Okay, myth number 9 is ice. Who use ice for any time you get injury, roll your ankle? Who use ice? Yeah, here.
They're scared now.
Yeah. Okay, what do we say about ice? So ice is we are told that I was told that if you injury roll your ankle, put the ice on, and that would be the best treatment. So nowadays, huge studies coming out and it says that no added benefit, so cannot be recommended. So there's lots of studies that people who don't have animals and dolphins as well, don't have the ice, and some other groups have added ice, but there is no added benefit. So that's the one thing. There's 2 studies say This study is in looking at the effectiveness of the ice for the people who had acute ankle sprain. But like this one, systematic review said that the current literature lacks evidence supporting the use of the cryotherapy, so like ice on management of the acute ankle sprain. So if you roll your ankle, you don't need to put the ice on. And the same as any muscle strain, if you have a muscle strain, you don't need to put the ice on. So that's, it was first that I heard, like, oh my God, what am I gonna do now? But like, now is a couple days, last week I played soccer and I had a hamstring strain maybe. And after that I went to a warm bath. Next day I was totally fine. So, there's no, from science, there's no other benefit. And what are we gonna do? Then we're gonna do the peace and love. But this one is, is a creator of the peace and love.
Have you guys heard about rice, price, all these things? Yes. They're outdated. Okay, so the best one is peace and love. I'm not even joking. It's true. So what Kaz is saying is, ice is one component. We realize that actually it might even delay the healing of some tissues to apply ice after you twist your ankle, after you injure a muscle. So my colleague, our colleague at the running clinic, Blaise Dubois, and I, we published a piece in the British Journal of Sports Medicine saying this is nonsense, look at the research, we need to reconsider these RICE and PRICE acronyms, and we made the peace and love one. So it's actually split into two parts. So the peace part is what you should do initially, right after the injury. So you twist your ankle, you need protection, so that's reducing your activities, make sure you don't push through pain, elevation, which I think you do right here quite a bit, and compression. Yeah, there you go. The A is for avoid anti-inflammatories. So when you take your Advils because you think it's going to help you recover faster, it actually delays the healing as well. It makes you feel better, but it delays the healing. So what do you want? Depends. And ice fits in there as well. So we said avoid anti-inflammatory pills and avoid icing based on the science that we have. There's no benefit, and it should probably be discouraged. Now, if you used ice in your life and now don't feel bad, don't think that your body is wrecked because you didn't heal properly. We know it delays healing, not that necessarily it won't happen, but you're not helping. And it takes a few more days more likely to recover at the cellular level. Your body has evolved for how many years to develop an inflammatory reaction when you get an injury, and we think we're smarter than our own evolution. We apply ice to cut the blood flow, and the body is trying to bring in more blood flow. So just think about that. And education, again, I have a full hour on that if you want, but education is just informing yourself, make sure that you don't rush to get, say, an MRI or something like that. Let nature play its role most of the time. It will turn out fine. And love is for what comes after those initial 48 hours. So you reload based on pain, be optimistic. And there's even research saying that your level of optimism is a better predictor of recovery after twisting your ankle than the level of the sprain is the grade 1, grade 2. So your level of optimism is more important. So smile, be happy. Vascularization, which is stimulating blood flow, get on the bike. You're all triathletes, so you just get on the bike, easy resistance, you just go high RPM, and that's gonna help you recover, and exercise to restore mobility, strength, and proprioception. Okay, so that's the acronym. But basically, like Kaz was saying, you don't need to apply ice after you get an injury. It might even be better not to. Is that surprising to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on applying heat?
Applying heat? That's a great question. And that's what Kaz was saying. I've definitely had people coming from, African countries, Caribbean, South America. They don't have ice available. They actually use heat quite often right after the injury, and they feel just fine. Right? And that, I don't know, in Japan overall.
Yeah, Japan too. Like we have the culture of a hot tub all the time, night before, kind of stuff. So like any time, I was growing up, and my parents or my coach said I put the ice on, but since I learned these things, and I stopped icing, and I just go in the bath, hot bath, and next day I feel good as well. So I would personally prefer heat. Yeah.
There are even studies that compared heat and ice right after you injure a muscle, and it seems like heat is actually more beneficial in terms of the tissue healing. So your body's trying to do something, and sometimes it's good to try and understand and not completely change what it's doing. Yeah.
How about contrast?
Contrast bath, so just alternating cold and hot. So the goal of that is to create some pumping, right? Which is a good thing. If you don't have access to a contrast bath, I say just hop on the bike and get your circulation active that way. It might even be better to get rid of the swelling if you do it that way, and just for your overall system to be active. But if you're in a state where you can't or you can't apply pressure yet, then definitely contrast bath is a good idea.
Following the polar bear swim.
What's that?
Following the polar bear swim.
Yeah, exactly. Polar bear swim. Last myth.
Okay, last myth. So, it's normal to leak when you run. It's a well-known fact that females leak, especially after having children or as they get older, and there's nothing you can do about it, says a local pharmacist who built their wealth through a famous brand of panty liners. So experts say that female runners should simply plan their running routes and water intake accordingly. But I think we should see, I'm not going to ask who has this problem, but we should see leaking as a sports injury. So there was a study that looked at the prevalence of urinary incontinence or leaking with activity in female athletes 18 to 45 years old who had never given birth, and the rates were astoundingly high. So basketball 35%, running 44%, soccer 50%, and trampolining and volleyball in the 70%. So can anyone guess what they think is one of the factors here in the higher prevalence levels with the sports? With trampolining and volleyball?
Topic, something to do, I don't know.
Impact? Yeah, exactly. So these sports have lots of jumping. So the pelvic floor is a group of muscles that lie under here. That's what they are, they're muscles. So the leaking is an inability of our muscles to counteract that impact or pressure, and it's treatable. So healthcare professional taught and supervised pelvic floor muscle training is the first line treatment for stress urinary incontinence. So if you have this problem, a lot of people think that you just have to live with it, or it's, after you have a baby, that's it. It's not the case. There's things that we can do. That's what I do for a female, the pelvic health physio. So not every physio can do this. You need to have extra training for that. But it's absolutely treatable. And it's not always about Kegels. So a lot of people think, yeah, okay, it's treatable, but I just have to do Kegels, which is strength training for the pelvic floor muscles. But not necessarily. Just to oversimplify it, sometimes we leak because we're weak, or we don't have enough tone in the muscle, but sometimes we actually have too much tone, so too much, let me explain tone again. For example, if your bicep is so tight that your range is here, we don't want to strengthen in this range. We want to lengthen it first and then strengthen. So sometimes there's just too much tone in the muscle that the muscle isn't able to function properly. So it's the best thing to do if you do have this issue is to get an assessment so that you know what the treatment is, because treatment differs whether you're in the hypertonic camp or not enough tone, but it is absolutely treatable. Any questions about that? Okay, if you do have questions, you can let me know. All right, so you heard a lot of myths. So running injuries aren't really, we know now, it's not because of our running shoes. It's not because of the way that we run or because of our anatomy, because we have flat feet. It's not any of that. Why do we get injured when we run? Like 50% of runners get injured. It has to do with the balance between load and capacity. So oftentimes it's a change that was too high for our body's capacity at that time, a change in load. So for example, sudden increase in speed, sudden increase in mileage, changing terrain, uphill training, downhill training when you're used to running flat, changing your footwear too quickly, changing the way that you run, or an increase in other activities. So that's the load side of things. But it's also a balance between load and capacity. So capacity means that's our body's ability to adapt. So how much sleep are we getting? How much rest are we getting? What's our mental health like? Stress, anxiety, work stress counts as well in our body's ability to adapt. And even previous injury can decrease our tissue tolerance. So that gives us a higher risk of getting injured there. So sometimes you can have a person that has no change in load. You ask all the questions, you change this, change that, no, everything's the same. But then you ask questions about capacity, like, okay, any changes in your sleep patterns? And they say yes. So that alone can be a cause for injury. So take-home messages. The body adapts as long as the applied stress is not greater than its capacity to adapt. Runners mostly get injured because they change something too quickly, so usually has to do with increased loads or can be decreased capacity of their body. And if you're injured, the best treatment approach should focus on load management. So that's what we love to do. We love to help runners and get to the root cause of the injury. A lot of times, the treatment approaches don't really address the root cause of why you got injured in the first place. So that's really our bread and butter, is helping runners get to the cause of it. It often has a lot to do with tweaking your training plan as well to help you get back to your normal running plan. So that's a big emphasis of what we do, rather than things that don't have as much impact.
Especially triathletes, like you guys are doing 3 different sports, so it's good to be able to do the cross training like easily, because most people, if they don't swim or they don't bike, then it's hard to get them to the pool or get them on the bike. But for you guys, it makes it simpler to just mix and match these different activities based on the injury.
So keep it simple, listen to your body, and smile. Does anyone know Courtney over there? She's one of the fastest trail runners, and she's always smiling. Her and Kipchoge as well. They're always smiling, right? So that really helps. There's actually a study on that. Runners who smile. What was the outcome?
So they compared your running economy when you're smiling versus when you're frowning, and you're more economical when you're smiling. So just smile when you run.
It's actually based on science. And enjoy running. Yeah.
A quick question about economy. When you say economy, you use less. You're more efficient in your use of oxygen. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah. So basically, if you're talking about performance overall, you would have 2 main parts. So you have your VO2, which is the size of your engine. You have your running economy, which is how much gas you're spending. So if you want to win a race, you need both a big engine and you need to be fuel efficient. So that allows you to increase the speed and spend less, so you can actually ramp up and spend the same amount of fuel. So that's the point here, is running economy, make it optimal, but then you still need to do your interval training and stuff to optimize performance.
Beef up your engine.
Pardon me?
Beef up your engine.
Yes.
So thanks everyone for coming. if you have any questions, let us know. As you can see, we're complete running nerds here. So happy to help you with that part, but also the other parts too. We can treat anything, but we just love treating running injuries.
And we gave you guys like a flyer you have there just to show you a little bit, like if you're wondering about your running technique and all that stuff. That's something we do. We take videos, slow motion. We give you like all the advice. We tell you if it's appropriate for you to change how you run or not, change of shoes, all that stuff. That's what we do. And by partnering with the Kelowna Triathlon Club, we're happy to give people who come for their first appointment, we give you a 10% discount as members of the Triathlon Club. So, yeah.
And also, I think I'd like to give a survey after, because we want to know what topics you'd like to learn next. So each of these myths is kind of its own talk itself. So if you just want to rank which ones you're most interested in, that'll give us an idea of what we'll talk about next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey, for organizing. Thanks, Josh, for hosting. Much appreciated.
Yeah, and on behalf of the Kelowna Tri Club, thank you so much for the three of you coming out, sharing your expertise.
Thank you.
Well,
We
thank
don't
you.
drink coffee, so. But yes, thank you so much for everything tonight, and hopefully maybe we'll be able to do this again sometime.
Awesome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.